In the dim glow of a single desk lamp, late on a rainy April evening, in her cozy Fremont apartment, Aaliyah Johnson sat cross-legged on the worn Persian rug her grandmother had woven by hand decades ago. At 32, with skin like polished mahogany and eyes that held the quiet fire of unyielding hope, Aaliyah was no stranger to secrets. But this one tucked away in a forgotten drawer of her grandmother's antique writing desk felt like a thunderclap from the past. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the yellowed pages. The ink faded, but the words sharp as a winter wind, a marriage contract drafted in elegant cursive, binding a young woman to a man of means, not out of love, but necessity. And there in the fine print, a clause that twisted her stomach. The honeymoon shall not be mere formality. It is the forge where hearts are remade, where passion ignites in the shadows of obligation. 7 days in seclusion shared bed and breath to awaken what duty alone cannot. Aaliyah's breath caught. Who had written this? Her grandmother Etta Johnson, a fierce black woman who had raised her alone after Aaliyah's mother passed too young, whispering stories of love that bloomed fierce and free in the Jim Crow South, loves that defied contracts and conventions. But this, it reeked of old-world scheming, the kind of gilded cage that trapped women in the name of legacy. She slammed the drawer shut, heart pounding. Why now? Why this relic surfacing like a ghost on the eve of her own quiet despair? Little did she know, across the glittering sprawl of Seattle, another woman, silver-haired and steely-eyed, was penning a similar fate, not for the past, but for Aaliyah's future. A fate where love, that most elusive thief, would steal in through the cracks of a forced vow. Flashback to that fateful afternoon just 2 weeks earlier, under the relentless Pacific Northwest drizzle that turned the world into a watercolor blur. Aaliyah was in her third-grade classroom at Roosevelt Elementary in Capitol Hill, a neighborhood where tech startups rubbed shoulders with community gardens and the hum of immigrant dreams. The school was a patchwork of hope, peeling paint on the walls, but bursts of color from her students' artwork dream boards for her Transformative Dreams project, where kids from single-parent homes and foster care sketched futures brighter than their realities. Aaliyah, with her master's in education from the University of Washington and a specialization in community outreach, had turned down cushy gigs at private academies in Bellevue. Why chase marble floors when the real magic happens on linoleum stained with crayon? She'd laugh to her best friend, sipping chamomile tea after parent-teacher nights. That day, as her students scampered out with backpacks slung low and laughter echoing like wind chimes, Aaliyah lingered, erasing the chalkboard's remnants of fractions and fairy tales. Jamal, her brightest spark, a wiry 9-year-old with braids like twisted vines and a gap-toothed grin, thrust a crumpled newspaper clipping under her nose. "Miss Aaliyah, look. You're famous." Local teacher ignites young hearts with dreams project. That's you. His pride swelled her chest, a warm ache that reminded her why she stayed. In a city where Amazon's shadow loomed large and rents climbed like ivy, these kids were her anchor. They dreamed of astronauts and authors, veterinarians and violinists, even when their pantries echoed empty. She ruffled Jamal's hair, murmuring thanks when the growl of an engine cut the chatter outside. A black limousine, sleek as a panther, idled at the curb, its tinted windows reflecting the school's faded brick facade, like a mirror to another world. Whispers rippled through the stragglers' kids pressing noses to chain-link fences. From the rear door emerged a woman who seemed carved from old Hollywood silver screen. Evelyn Harrington, 83, with hair like spun moonlight and a posture that whispered of boardrooms and ballrooms. Flanked by two discreet security guards in tailored suits, she moved with the grace of someone who had outlasted empires. Aaliyah knew the name Harrington Industries, the behemoth of real estate and tech that dotted Seattle's skyline with glass towers and funded half the city's nonprofits. But why here, in this humble corner of underfunded dreams? "Are you Aaliyah Johnson?" Evelyn's voice was velvet over steel, warm but commanding, laced with the faint lilt of a southern belle who'd traded magnolias for evergreens. Aaliyah nodded, wiping chalk dust from her hands on her simple navy skirt, suddenly aware of the coffee stain on her blouse. "Yes, ma'am. Can I help you?" Evelyn's blue eyes sharp as Lake Washington's horizon softened just a fraction. "I've read about your project, the one giving voice to these little ones. Mind if I steal a moment?" The guards hung back like shadows as Evelyn stepped into the classroom, her Louboutins clicking softly on the tile. She ran a manicured finger along a student's drawing, a girl with wings soaring over the Space Needle captioned, "My dream, fly free." "Beautiful," she murmured. "Reminds me of my own girlhood scribbles before life clipped the wings." They talked for an hour, the rain pattering like forgotten applause against the windows. Evelyn shared fragments of her tapestry widowed young after William Harrington built their fortune from a dusty Oregon construction yard, raising sons who became titans, but losing pieces of herself in the process. "Love, my dear," she said, settling into a tiny desk chair with surprising ease. "It's the quiet architect behind every empire, not the contracts or the closings, but the late-night confessions the hand held through storms. I had that with William, fierce, unyielding. But my grandson, oh Ethan, he's forgotten how to feel it." Her voice cracked, just once, revealing the matriarch's hidden fractures. Ethan Harrington, 38. The golden boy of Harrington Industries, Harvard MBA. Stanford, polish a face on Forbes that could melt ice caps. Yet Evelyn's eyes dimmed when she spoke of him. He knows the price of everything, but the value of a heartbeat lost to boardrooms and buyouts. Aaliyah listened, her own heart stirring. At 32, she'd loved once deeply, disastrously. Marcus, a jazz musician with hands like maple keys, who'd promised forever in smoky clubs, but vanished with the tide, leaving her with a scarred heart and a vow to pour her love into lesson plans instead. "We all carry those ghosts, don't we?" Aaliyah replied softly, offering Evelyn a mug of instant coffee from her ancient percolator. "But these kids, they remind me love isn't just romance. It's showing up day after day, even when it hurts." Evelyn's gaze lingered appraising, as if peering into Aaliyah's soul. "Precisely. That's why I'm here. My heart, it's failing me, doctors say. Not dramatically like in the movies, but steadily like sand through fingers. I need more than nurses and needles. I need life. Someone to walk these gardens with, to read the poets and parse the headlines. Someone authentic like you." She paused, her silver rings glinting. "Be my companion. Mornings and evenings at Harrington Manor in Queen Anne. 5 times your salary. Keep your afternoons for these dreamers. It's not charity, Aaliyah. It's an investment in a soul weary of solitude." Aaliyah's pulse quickened. The offer was a lifeline, debts from student loans nipping at her heels, her apartment's heat flickering like hope in winter. But it felt like more a bridge to a world she'd glimpsed only in headlines, where wealth whispered, but loneliness screamed. "Why me?" she asked, voice barely above the rain. "Because," Evelyn said, rising with quiet authority, "in your eyes, I see the woman I was before fortunes hardened the heart. And perhaps, just perhaps, you can remind someone else of that softness." She pressed a card into Aaliyah's hand, embossed gold with the Harrington crest. "Think on it. But hurry, dear. Time like love doesn't wait. That night, as Aaliyah pored over the clipping Jamal had given her, Evelyn's words wove through her thoughts, like threads of fate. The next morning she called. "I'm in," she said, heart aflutter, with equal parts terror and thrill. Evelyn's laugh was a melody of relief. "Welcome home, child. Oh, the stories we'll share." Harrington Manor was no home. It was a cathedral of glass and stone perched on Queen Anne Hill, like a crown overlooking Puget Sound. Neoclassical arches met modern minimalism, vast windows framing evergreens that danced in the breeze, interiors adorned with O'Keeffe florals, and Hopper's solitary figures echoes of isolation amid opulence. The staff moved like ghosts in a well-rehearsed ballet, gardeners coaxing roses from misty soil chefs, crafting farm-to-table symphonies. Aaliyah's suite overlooked the labyrinthine gardens, a sanctuary of silk linens and fresh orchids. But it was Evelyn who made it breathe. Their first walk was magic under the arbor. Evelyn, in a cashmere shawl, Aaliyah, in her sensible flats, sharing tales of first loves. Evelyn's stolen kisses in wartime dances, Aaliyah's jazz-fueled heartbreaks. "Love isn't a ledger, Aaliyah," Evelyn confided, linking arms. "It's the ache that makes us whole." Evenings blurred into intimacy, Aaliyah reading Dickinson by firelight. "Hope is the thing with feathers," followed by debates on market shifts and civil rights echoes. "Money builds walls," Evelyn would say, her hand frail but firm on Aaliyah's. "But love, it tears them down." Yet in quiet moments, Aaliyah's mind drifted to that unearthed contract, its words, a siren song. Was Evelyn's offer truly just companionship, or the prelude to something scripted, something that could bind her to a stranger's bed and a legacy's demand? She pushed it aside, chalking it to old ghosts. But as the weeks unfolded, Evelyn's stories turned to Ethan, his boyhood sketches of soaring eagles, his piano melodies silenced by boardroom anthems. "He needs a heart like yours," Evelyn murmured, one twilight eyes gleaming with unspoken design, "to remember what it means to truly fall." And so, in the hush of Manor's halls, Aaliyah felt the first stirrings, not of suspicion, but of a deeper pull. Love, she realized, often arrives uninvited, wrapped in riddles and rain. Little did she know, the greatest riddle was yet to unfold, a will that would force her hand, not in ink, but in the raw fire of unintended passion. Oh, dear listener, picture yourself in those gardens, the scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine wrapping around you, like a long-lost embrace. Have you ever chased a dream that scared you, just a little, only to find it leading straight to the heart you thought you'd locked away? If this whisper of what's to come tugs at your own memories of love's quiet miracles, lean in closer. Share below what was the twist that changed your story forever. Your words might just light someone else's path. Until next time, hold that heart close. It's wiser than we know. The first night at Harrington Manor unfolded like a half-remembered dream, the kind that lingers in the quiet hours before dawn. Aaliyah's room, with its high ceilings and walls, papered in soft sage silk, felt less like a sanctuary and more like a stage set for someone else's life. She unpacked her modest suitcase, faded jeans folded beside Evelyn's gift of a cashmere robe, and traced the cool marble mantel with tentative fingers. Outside, the gardens whispered under a sliver of moon willows, bending like old confidants, sharing secrets with the wind. Sleep came fitfully laced with the distant hum of the sound's fairies, a reminder that even in opulence, the world turned on tides of uncertainty. By morning, the manor stirred with the precision of a well-oiled heirloom clock. Aaliyah descended the grand staircase, her footsteps muffled on Persian runners, that had journeyed from bazaars half a world away. In the sunlit breakfast nook, Evelyn awaited a silver tray of scones and Earl Grey steaming between them. "Sleep evaded you, didn't it?" She observed her gaze keen as a seamstress's needle. Aaliyah nodded, sliding into a wicker chair that creaked like an old friend's welcome. "It's all so vast, like stepping into a novel I haven't read the ending to." Evelyn's laugh was a gentle ripple, seasoned by decades of both joy and quiet sorrow. "Vastness has a way of echoing our own empty spaces, dear. But fill it with your voice, and it becomes a home." That was Evelyn's gift, turning vulnerability into verse, as if life's rough drafts could be revised with a steady hand and a compassionate eye. Over the next days, Aaliyah navigated the manor's rhythms. The butler's deferential nod, the chef's subtle inquiries about her tastes. Yet it was Helen, the housekeeper of 40 faithful years, who grounded her. A sturdy woman in her late 60s, with laugh lines etched like riverbeds across her warm brown skin and hair pinned in a practical chignon, Helen cornered Aaliyah one crisp afternoon in the linen closet, amid stacks of monogrammed towels scented with lavender. "Don't let the polish fool you, miss," Helen said, her voice a low conspiratorial drawl, honed in Georgia kitchens before fate carried her north. "This place shines because folks like me keep the dust from settling on the heart. Mrs. Evelyn, she's got the sharpest eye for souls, sees the gold in the grit. If she's chosen you, it's 'cause you've got roots that run deep, like those old oaks out back." Aaliyah, folding a napkin with unpracticed care, felt a lump rise in her throat. Helen's words were a balm, evoking her own grandmother Etta, who had mended more than hems with stories spun over sweet potato pie. "Thank you," Aaliyah murmured. "I feel like an intruder in a family portrait." Helen squeezed her hand, calluses rough as truth. "Intruders don't mend what's frayed. You will." And so the afternoons belonged to the children, Aaliyah slipping back to Roosevelt Elementary as the bell rang like a starting pistol for dreams. But mornings and evenings wove her into Evelyn's tapestry. Their walks through the willow grove became ritual, a shaded path, where branches trailed like lovers' fingers, over a stream dappling sunlight into fleeting mosaics on the gravel. Evelyn leaned lightly on Aaliyah's arm, her steps measured, but her stories unbound. She spoke of William, the man who had been her anchor and her storm, a lanky Oregon farm boy with ink-stained fingers and eyes like smoked quartz, who built Harrington Industries from blueprints sketched on barnwood. "He courted me with wildflowers and whispers of forever." Evelyn recalled one golden September morn as a butterfly alighted on her sleeve like a punctuation mark. "We danced in fields under harvest moons, not knowing empires waited in the furrows." Love. Aaliyah, it's the soil where everything grows, even when the rains come fierce. Aaliyah shared in kind, her voice gaining strength with each petal-strewn step. She told of Etta, who had fled Mississippi's chains for Seattle's promise, raising Aaliyah on hymns and history books borrowed from the library. Grandma said love wasn't a fairy tale. It was the quiet choice to stay when the story got hard. Evelyn nodded her free hand, brushing a willow leaf. "Wise woman, my William taught me that. We lost 3 babies before the boys came, each a little grief etched in our bones. But he held me through the nights, humming off-key lullabies until dawn. That's love's true melody, not perfection, but persistence." As autumn deepened, painting the grove in amber and rust, their evenings deepened too. In Evelyn's library, a vaulted haven of leather-bound tomes and a hearth that crackled like confidential gossip, Aaliyah read aloud by lamplight, They began with poets, Dickinson's feathered hope perching in the soul's chillest land, Rossetti's echoes of remembered springs. Evelyn's eyes would mist her frail hand, finding Aaliyah's. "Read that again," she'd say, voice husky. Some lines cut deeper the second time like a well-loved scar. Then came the business reports, parsed with Evelyn's unerring insight mergers, dissected like sonnets market dips, lamented as lost loves. "Tides turn, but the shore endures," she'd muse. "Fortune's fickle, character is the compass." One such night as rain lashed the panes, like impatient suitors, Aaliyah ventured her own confession. Curled in wingback chairs, a decanter of sherry untouched between them, she spoke of Marcus, the musician whose saxophone wailed promises in dim clubs, only to fade into silence with the last encore. "I thought love was that wild jazz riff, all heat and improvisation. But he left, and I learned it's the steady bass line that carries you home." Evelyn listened, her silence a cradle. When Aaliyah finished, tears tracing silent paths down her cheeks, Evelyn drew her close. "Oh, child, you've carried that note too long. Love isn't the crescendo. It's the breath between the space, where grace grows." Emboldened by such trust, Evelyn insisted on visiting the school, defying her doctor's murmurs of rest. Aaliyah arranged it quietly, her heart aflutter with a mix of pride and protectiveness. On a Tuesday, crisp as new linen, Evelyn arrived not in limousine finery, but a simple wool coat and pearls, elegance understated like wisdom earned. The children, sensing magic in her silver crown, gathered like moths to a gentle flame. Jamal presented his dream board, a rocket-bound boy, with stars in his eyes. Evelyn knelt, yes, knelt on the scuffed linoleum to trace the crayon lines. "This isn't just a drawing, young man," she said, voice trembling with the weight of recognition. "It's a map to tomorrow. Follow it true." By day's end, she pledged a donation vast enough to fund art supplies for years, and field trips to the planetarium, gifts that bloomed not from purse strings, but from the soil of shared stories. Yet joy shadowed into quiet ache when Evelyn learned of the computer lab inauguration, funded by the Harrington Foundation. Ethan had promised to attend his assistant's email, crisp with assurances. But he sent regrets via proxy, an unforeseen merger crisis. The note read as impersonal as a stock ticker. Evelyn's face, usually a portrait of poised serenity, crumpled like parchment in the Manor's solarium. Aaliyah found her there, gazing at a faded photo, a boy of 10, tousle-haired and gap-toothed, at a piano's keys, fingers dancing over ivories like sunlight on water. "That's Ethan," Evelyn whispered, passing the frame, "before the world taught him to play only the numbers." Aaliyah studied the image, the boy's eyes, so like Evelyn's, alight with unbridled wonder. Ethan Harrington, the enigma of Seattle's elite, a man whose boardroom conquests doubled fortunes, but whose personal ledger seemed perpetually in the red. At 38, with chiseled features, honed by Harvard's rigor and Stanford's polish, he was the face of Harrington Industries towers, rising like glass sentinels over the bay. Acquisitions whispered in power lunches. The papers lionized him as the Silicon Sentinel, a white knight billionaire whose restructurings streamlined empires. But whispers in union halls painted him colder, the architect of layoffs that scattered families like autumn leaves, negotiations sharp as scalpels. He wasn't forged in fire, Evelyn confided later over chamomile in her sitting room, the fire's glow casting long shadows. He was a dreamer once, etching birds in flight on his homework margins, composing Chopin nocturnes that hushed the house. My son Robert and his wife Laura, they molded him for the throne, not the garden. Success demands sacrifice, Robert would say, shredding those sheet music pages. Ethan learned the lesson too well, built walls so high even love knocks in vain. Aaliyah's heart twisted a pang of recognition for the boy, eclipsed by the man. In the weeks that followed, Evelyn's matchmaking was subtle as mist. A dinner invitation here, a garden tour, timed to Ethan's rare visits there. The first encounter was in the Willow Grove, Ethan striding in from a helicopter's whirsuit, impeccable as armor phone, a perpetual scepter in his grip. Grandmother. He greeted, air-kissing her cheek with the efficiency of a closing deal. His eyes, storm gray piercing, flicked to Aaliyah, appraising distant. And you must be the companion. The word landed like frost on petals. Evelyn beamed undeterred. Aaliyah, my dear friend. Ethan, she's the one breathing life into those school children's futures, the way you used to breathe magic into your sketches. He nodded politely, a smile as brief as a stock surge. Admirable work. Grandmother's always had a soft spot for causes. Conversation skimmed surfaces, weather, wine, vintages, the latest tech merger. Aaliyah felt the chill of his reserve, yet glimpsed fractures, a hesitation when Evelyn mentioned the piano, long silent, in the music room. A shadow crossing his face, at tales of the grove's hidden nooks, where he'd once hidden treasures of acorns and arrowheads. As he departed, phone already alight, Evelyn squeezed Aaliyah's hand. See the boy peeking through, hold that image, close child. Sometimes love is the key to locked doors. The autumn waned, leaves carpeting the paths in crimson elegies. Evelyn's frailty deepened, her laughter rarer, though her spirit burned steady. One May Eve, wait, no, the leaves had turned, but time blurred in the manor's embrace. Evelyn slipped away as serenely as dusk folds into night. Aaliyah sat vigil in her bedchamber, reading Dickinson's Because I Could Not Stop for Death. The words a tender dirge. Evelyn smiled in her sleep hand, clasped in Aaliyah's, and whispered, the carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. Then stillness. Aaliyah held her tears silent, as snowfall the grove outside sighing in shared bereavement. The wake was a spectacle of Seattle's elite gowns, rustling like judgments, toasts clinking like hollow promises. Aaliyah stood apart, heart heavy with the authenticity of Evelyn's inner circle, Helen dabbing eyes with a lace hanky. Jamal and his classmates clutching wildflower bouquets, a handful of old friends whose grief etched true lines. Ethan arrived late, his presence a thunderhead-tailored black suit, jaw set like granite. Their eyes met across the room. His softened, just a flicker, murmuring thanks for her vigil. But the phone in his pocket buzzed, insistent, pulling him away. In that moment, Aaliyah wondered, could the melody Evelyn cherished still echo in him, waiting for the right voice to coax it free, as the casket lowered into the earth under willows that wept golden tears. Aaliyah felt the weight of unspoken legacies. Little did she know, Evelyn's final notes, a will woven with threads of audacious hope, would soon demand her own heart's refrain. The morning after Evelyn's passing dawned with a mercy of mist, veiling the manor in a soft, forgiving haze that muffled the world's sharper edges. Aaliyah moved through the solarium like a shadow, her fingers trailing the glass panes, where dew traced erratic paths, mirroring the quiet unraveling within her. Evelyn's absence was not a void, but a hush, a space where echoes lingered her laughter, folding into the rustle of silk curtains, her scent of lavender, and old books clinging to the armchairs like a reluctant farewell. Helen found her there, pressing a cup of chamomile into her hands, the steam rising like unspoken prayers. "She went easy, miss." Helen murmured, her voice a gravelly comfort, honed by years of bedside vigils. Slipped away smiling poem on her lips. That's Mrs. Evelyn, always one step ahead of the sorrow. A word spread through the family like ripples on still water. Robert and Laura, arriving from their Beacon Hill penthouse, in a flurry of hushed directives and dampened eyes. Derek, Ethan's cousin, and the company's sharp-edged financial director, gliding in with a briefcase that seemed heavier than grief. Ethan was last, his helicopter slicing the fog at dawn, face carved from the same unyielding granite as the manor's facade. He paused in the foyer cote, shedding droplets like unshed tears, and for a heartbeat, his gaze locked on Aaliyah's, raw, unguarded, a flicker of the boy from the faded photo. "You were with her," he said, not a question. She nodded, throat tight. Until the end. He reached out a hand, hovering before retreating to his pocket. "Thank you." The words hung fragile as frost before duty pulled him away to console his parents. The wake held in the manor's grand ballroom under chandeliers that wept crystal prisms was a tapestry of Seattle's veiled elite tech moguls in bespoke wool philanthropists with pearls like whispered secrets. Politicians whose condolences flowed smoother than vintage Cabernet. Toasts clinked like fragile china, anecdotes polished to a sheen. Evelyn, the indomitable force behind Harrington's rise. The silver fox, who outfoxed Fortune 500 boards with a smile and a strategy. Aaliyah stood at the periphery, a quiet sentinel, in a simple black sheath that Helen had laid out with maternal care, observing the performance with a heart heavy as leaded glass. True sorrow etched only in the margins, Helen's fingers twisting a lace handkerchief until it frayed. A cluster of Roosevelt children shepherded by a volunteer clutching crayon cards that read, "Thank you for believing in our dreams," in wobbly script. Old friends like Miriam, Evelyn's bridge partner from the junior league days, whose laughter lines deepened with each stifled sob. Ethan moved among them like a specter, his presence commanding, yet adrift, accepting hugs with the stiffness of a man, unaccustomed to embrace his phone silenced for once, but fingers twitching as if longing for its distraction. When their eyes met again across the room, amid the murmur of veiled hypocrisies, he crossed to her side, voice low against the swell of strings from a hired quartet. "She spoke of you often in those last weeks, said you reminded her of dawn after a long night." Aaliyah's breath caught the words a bridge over the chasm of their scant acquaintance. "She was my dawn," she replied softly, "teaching me that love isn't hoarded, it's given like sunlight." He held her gaze a moment longer, something unspoken passing between them, a thread of Evelyn's weaving. Then Laura's hand on his arm drew him back into the fray. 3 days later, as October's leaves turned the grounds to a quilt of burnished copper, the family gathered in the library, a sanctum of mahogany shelves groaning under leather spines, and the faint papery scent of archived ambitions. Dr. Walter Hayes, Evelyn's lawyer, for 4 decades a silver fox himself, with wire-rimmed glasses and a voice like aged bourbon, presided from the fireside wing chair. The room held its breath. Robert nursing a tumbler of scotch, Laura's pearls clicking like rosary beads, Derek's eyes gleaming with the avarice of a man scenting opportunity. Ethan sat apart, posture erect as a sentinel, Aaliyah beside him at Evelyn's insistence, her presence a sealed directive in the summons puzzling as a half-solved riddle. Hayes cleared his throat, unfolding the document with the reverence of an acolyte. The preliminaries flowed like a gentle current, heirlooms, dispersed William's pocket watch to Robert, a pearl brooch to Laura. Bequests to loyal staff, Helen receiving a cottage on Whidbey Island, with a garden for her heirloom roses, and a pension to outlast the tides. Donations cascaded endowments to women's shelters, scholarships for first-generation scholars, a wing at the Seattle Art Museum. For overlooked Black artists, a nod to Evelyn's quiet fury against erasure. The foundation bearing her name would flourish, its tendrils reaching into community gardens and literacy programs. Murmurs of approval rippled the air, easing like a held breath released. Then Hayes paused, adjusting his spectacles with deliberate care, the fire's glow casting elongated shadows that danced like hesitant partners. Now to the matter of my 40% stake in Harrington Industries, he intoned, voice steady as slate. The room stilled a collective inhale. These shares shall enter a custodial trust for 6 months thereafter, vesting fully in my grandson Ethan William Harrington, upon one irrevocable condition. Silence thickened, viscous as honey. Ethan must wed Aaliyah Johnson within 30 days of this reading and sustain the union for no less than 6 months, cohabiting under one roof. The explosion was instantaneous, a shatter of composure like fine crystal under careless heel. Laura gasped, hand fluttering to her throat as if to cage a scream. Robert choked on his whiskey, sputtering crimson-faced. Derek's lips curled in a smile too swift to mask his fingers drumming a silent tattoo of triumph. Ethan surged to his feet, chair scraping like a verdict. This is madness, preposterous, grandmother would never. His voice cracked fury, etching lines deeper than his 38 years, eyes storm dark with betrayal. Aaliyah sat frozen, the words a thunderbolt through her core, shock blooming cold in her veins, then hot with indignation. Gazes pinned her accusatory from Laura, speculative from Derek, and from Ethan, a blaze of distrust that seared. She, the outsider, the companion of mere months, thrust into this farce of forever. The library spun Evelyn's portrait above the mantel, gazing down with that enigmatic smile, as if she'd scripted the chaos herself. Hayes remained imperturbable, a rock in the tempest. Should the condition fail, the shares divide equally, half to the Evelyn Harrington Foundation, half to a public education trust, irrevocably beyond family purview. Robert's face blanched to ash. Derek's smile faltered, recalculating. Legal challenge, Ethan growled, pacing like a caged wolf. Hayes inclined his head. Anticipated, Mr. Harrington. The document withstands scrutiny. Psychological evaluations affirm her lucidity videos appended for judicial eyes. Litigation spans years. Shares frozen control, vesting with the board. Where alliances, shall we say, lean toward your cousin Derek. Derek's feigned neutrality cracked his jaw, tightening at the barb years of shadowed rivalry, his own Harvard pedigree, chafing against Ethan's heirship, now this lever of leverage. Aaliyah rose, voice a thread of steel. I want no part. This grotesque charade ends here. Hayes lifted a hand, extending a sealed vellum envelope, the Harrington crest embossed like a royal decree. Mrs. Harrington foresaw your grace, Miss Johnson. A letter penned for you alone. Trembling Aaliyah broke the wax Evelyn's script, unfolding like a lover's missive. Elegant loops, belying the audacity within. Dearest Aaliyah. It began by these words: I've slipped my earthly moorings. This request may strike as folly, even folly's cruel kin. But hear me not. Caprice drives it, but the fierce love of a grandmother who sees her boy's soul adrift in ambition's ice flows. Ethan drowns in the chill he wrought. You hold the warmth he craves, compassion's unyielding flame. Love him not yet, nor must you. 6 months a season to thaw. In exchange, your dreams project flowers, eternal funded beyond this page. The choice, yours wholly. with love that outlives oaks, Evelyn. Tears blurred the ink, Aaliyah's chest heaving with the gale of it betrayal, laced with Evelyn's unerring insight, the matriarch's final gambit, a bridge of thorns to tenderness. Ethan loomed, accusation sharpening his features. You schemed this, whispered vulnerabilities when she was frail. Rage flared in Aaliyah, her gaze locking his. I sought nothing but her stories, her hand in mine. Your empire holds no allure for me, only the woman who saw me truly. The room's tension coiled tighter, Robert drawing Ethan aside for murmured counsels. Derek trailing like a shadow with designs. Alone with Hayes, Aaliyah's voice fractured. Why this theater? She was my compass, not my puppeteer. The lawyer's eyes softened, paternal. Evelyn orchestrated symphonies from silences, weighed every variable like a jeweler's scale. This, her masterstroke for him, perhaps. For you, a mirror to your own guarded heart. As the family dispersed into fractured huddles, Aaliyah retreated to the grove, the willows now bare sentinels against the gathering dusk. Evelyn's letter clutched to her breast. She wept not for loss, but for the tangled beauty of it, a love forced from frost perhaps, but blooming in the bargain. In the distance, Ethan's silhouette paced the terrace phone, forgotten wrestling shadows of his own. The game was afoot, Evelyn's echoes urging dare the thaw child. What melts may mend. The library's heavy oak doors swung shut behind Aaliyah, like the final curtain on a tragedy she hadn't auditioned for, leaving the Harringtons to their tempest of whispers and recriminations. The manor, once a haven of whispered confidences, now pressed against her like a corset, too tightly laced, its corridors echoing with the ghosts of Evelyn's laughter, now drowned in the clamor of betrayal. She slipped out through the side entrance, the autumn air crisp as a slap, carrying the faint brine of Puget Sound on its breath. Her apartment in Fremont waited like an old friend, a second-floor walk-up above a bookstore whose shelves sagged with dog-eared romances and histories of unsung heroines. The stairs creaked under her weight, each step a meditation on Evelyn's audacity, that silver-threaded audacity that had woven her into this web. Inside, the space enveloped her in its familiar embrace. Mismatched bookshelves groaning under volumes of Maya Angelou and Toni Morrison, a kitchenette where chamomile steeped in chipped mugs, and a window box of pansies nodding against the sill like sympathetic listeners. Aaliyah sank onto the threadbare sofa. Evelyn's letter unfurling in her lap once more, its edges softening from her touch. 6 months, the words implored a season to thaw. Thaw what? Her own heart armored by Marcus's vanishing act, or Ethan's, that fortress of figures and firewalls. She traced the curve of the script. Evelyn's hand steady, even in farewell, and felt a sob rise unbidden, not of rage, but of a profound, aching tenderness for the woman who had seen her fractures and called them constellations. The days blurred into a haze of half-hearted lesson plans and solitary walks along the locks, where salmon leaped against the current in silver arcs of determination. Reporters circled like gulls, their flashes piercing the fog. Harrington Ayre's mystery bride, Aaliyah dodged them with the grace of a deer in headlights, her phone silenced, save for Helen's daily check-ins voicemails, laced with maternal steel. Hold fast, miss. Mrs. Evelyn's storms always cleared to rainbows. Robert called once, his tone a velvet glove over an iron fist, offering arrangements that reeked of buyouts. Laura's message was frostier, a plea wrapped in warning. Think of the family dear. Such scandals age us all prematurely. Derek's silence. But Aaliyah sensed his shadow, that cousin's ambition, coiling like smoke from a distant fire. On the third evening, as twilight bruised the sky in purples and golds, a knock echoed firm, insistent, yet hesitant, as a suitor's first stammer. Aaliyah peered through the peephole. Ethan sans entourage, his overcoat dusted with Fremont's drizzle face, etched with the weariness of a man who'd stared down mergers. But not this maelstrom. Two security shadows loomed at the curb, discreet as punctuation, but he waved them off with a curt gesture. She opened the door, a sliver chain, rattling like unspoken reservations. "What do you want Mr. Harrington to measure me for the villain's cape?" His eyes, those storm-gray depths, held no thunder, only a quiet fatigue that humanized him, stripping the CEO to the contours of a man adrift. "May I come in 5 minutes? No ultimatums." Reluctance warred with curiosity. She unlatched the chain, stepping aside. The apartment swallowed him whole, his tailored wool absurd against her thrift store quilt, the air thick with the scent of her simmering lentils and the faint vanilla of baking scones. He stood in the foyer, gaze roaming a student's finger-painted card on the fridge. "Miss Aaliyah, you make dreams real," a jazz vinyl spinning low on the turntable. Coltrane's A Love Supreme, its notes weaving melancholy gold through the room. "This is you," he said almost to himself, shedding his coat over a chair, like shedding armor. They settled at the scarred oak table, Aaliyah, pouring coffee black as midnight, hers, sugared, his, untouched. No preamble. Ethan's voice was low, threaded with the raw edge of sleepless nights. The boards circling like vultures. Derek's already rallied proxies, painting me as unhinged a grandmother's folly, unraveling the empire. He slid a leather folio across the table, its clasp clicking open like a confessional. Inside, a contract pages crisp as new snow clauses, etched in legalese, that danced between protection and possession. Marriage in 30 days, cohabitation in the manor's east wing, separate suites, yet shared spaces for the facade. Public appearances, galas, ribbon cuttings, the occasional yacht soiree on the Sound. And there, buried in addenda like a thorn in velvet, a week at Lake Chelan. The family retreat, shared accommodations, intimate authenticity, required to sustain verisimilitude. Aaliyah's pulse stuttered. The old contract's echo resurfaced, its honeymoon clause, a spectral twin. "Why show me this?" she asked, voice steady as she scanned the terms. Compensation generous, as a river, her project funded in perpetuity. Even a clause for quiet dissolution. Post 6 months, no strings but the ones of memory. Ethan's fingers drummed the table, a rhythm betraying the boy pianist. Evelyn had mourned. "Because grandmother's gambit isn't just whimsy, it's a grenade in my lap. Lose the shares, and Derek guts the company, 5,000 jobs. Vaporized social arms like your schools axed for efficiency." His gaze lifted, meeting hers without evasion. "I built this legacy on her husband's sweat, not to watch it crumble on my watch. But it's not just boardrooms. It's her. She saw something in you, in us, that I can't dismiss. Not yet." Aaliyah leaned back, the chair creaking like doubt's hinge. The man before her was no cipher lines of command, fanned from his eyes. But softer now, gilded by the lamplight vulnerability, peeking like dawn through blinds. She thought of Evelyn's Grove walks, the matriarch's tales of William's quiet courtings, picnics under evergreens, promises sealed with wild berry stains on lips. Was this Ethan's version? Cold clauses for a warm charade? "And you?" She pressed her tone, a gentle probe. "What do you see in this farce, a merger of convenience or something grandmother hoped to thaw?" He exhaled, a sound like wind through willows. "Truth, I see a mirror. Grandmother's letters scattered in my office like breadcrumbs spoke of the boy I buried under balance sheets. Sketches of eagles, not earnings reports. You pulled that truth from her, made her laugh like she hadn't in years. Perhaps this is madness, but it's hers. And in the quiet hours when the manor's too vast, I wonder if it's mine too. The admission hung fragile as spun sugar, and Aaliyah felt it tug a thread connecting her guarded heart to his woven from Evelyn's loom. That night stretched long, the contract a Pandora's box between them. They talked not of terms, but tendrils her jazz-scarred soul, his Harvard-honed isolation, the way Coltrane's sax mourned what words couldn't. Dawn crept in, painting the kitchen in roseate hues when Aaliyah closed the folio. "Not for the money," she said, voice a vow to the woman who'd bridged their worlds. For her. For the boy in the photo who might still hum Chopin in the dark. Ethan's nod was solemn, a pact sealed in coffee dregs. Then we begin. 30 days to fool the world, and perhaps ourselves. 2 weeks later, the ceremony unfolded in the understated hush of Seattle's municipal chambers, a far cry from cathedral vaults or yacht decks. No throng of society pages, just Helen as witness. Her eyes misty under a pillbox hat, clutching a posy of Evelyn's favorite lilies, and Hayes, his briefcase, a silent chaperone. Aaliyah wore ivory silk, simple as a son's first promise, her curls pinned with a pearl comb from Evelyn's vanity. Ethan, in charcoal wool that softened his edges, stood tall, but trembling faintly at the vows, in sickness and health, for richer or ruse. Their rings, platinum bands, etched with willow leaves, slid on with a whisper cool as resolve. Outside, the press waited like faithful hounds, flashes popping like brittle applause. "How'd you meet?" One shouted, lens hungry. Ethan drew her close arm, a practiced anchor around her waist, his breath warm against her temple. Grandmother had the vision saw in Aaliyah, the light I was blind to. Fate's funny that way. For the cameras he smiled, all polished charm. In her ear a murmur, the perfect pair until the curtain falls. But as the limousine purred toward Queen Anne, Aaliyah caught his reflection in the window, eyes lingering on hers, a question unspoken. What if the play outlives the script? Back at the manor, separate wings awaited like polite strangers, yet the air hummed with new gravity. Aaliyah paused in the hallway, Evelyn's portrait gazing down, smile, knowing eyes alight with that eternal mischief. "What alchemy did you brew, old friend?" she whispered, tracing the frame. Across the divide in his study, Ethan poured scotch neat, the amber liquid catching firelight as he stared at the ring's gleam. The contract bound them in ink, but Evelyn's ghost whispered of ink's impermanence, of vows that might, against all odds, take root in the heart's reluctant soil. The first fortnight of their union unfolded like a meticulously rehearsed pas de deux, graceful in the spotlight, tentative in the wings. By day, Aaliyah and Ethan glided through Seattle's gilded undercurrents, a charity luncheon at the Four Seasons, where crystal flutes chimed like tentative toasts to their whirlwind romance. Ethan's hand at the small of her back, a map of propriety rather than passion. An evening gala at the Museum of Glass, where molten sculptures twisted like half-formed hearts, and Aaliyah's sapphire gown, courtesy of Laura's designer decree, draped her like a secret unveiled. He introduced her with a warmth scripted for headlines. "My wife, the woman who teaches dreams to fly." She smiled, a crescent of poise, her laughter a melody to mask the echo of Evelyn's letter in her pocket. 6 months to thaw. But in the manor's shadowed alcoves, their paths crossed like ships, signaling from afar a murmured goodnight over chamomile in the solarium, his study door ajar to reveal spreadsheets glowing like distant stars, her afternoons lost to Roosevelt's clamor, where children clamored for stories untainted by empire. Laura, thawing from her initial frost, orchestrated the wardrobe with a mother's veiled apology, silks and sheaths in jewel tones that hugged Aaliyah's curves like whispered encouragements. "If we're to play this role," she'd said, over tea pearls, glinting like reluctant stars, "let it be with elegance. Evelyn would approve." Yet the weight of performance pressed paparazzi shadows at every corner, headlines blooming like invasive vines. Harrington's hidden heart, from classroom to altar. Aaliyah stole moments in the grove Evelyn's willows, now skeletal sentinels, their bare branches tracing questions against the November sky. Is this thaw or just the chill before spring? It was on a Wednesday, over a breakfast of poached pears and parted silences, that Ethan shattered the fragile equilibrium. The East Wing dining room with its bay windows, framing the sound's restless gray, held them in a tableau of unspoken truces. He set down his tablet, the screen's glow fading like a deferred confession. "We leave for Lake Chelan tomorrow. The contract stipulates a week before the board's winter summit. There's been a leak to the Post-Intelligencer whispers of grandmother's ploy. We reinforce the narrative now, or Derek's vultures descend." His voice was even a boardroom timbre, but his fingers toyed with the linen napkin, betraying the boy beneath. Aaliyah's fork paused midair, pear juice glistening like unshed tears. July had been the planned summer's languid veil, but this acceleration felt like a shove into deeper waters. "So soon, the children." She trailed off, the excuse thin as mist. Truth be told, the manor's vastness had begun to echo her solitude, Ethan's rare glances lingering like questions she dared not voice. He met her eyes, a flicker of something, unguarded regret perhaps, or the ghost of Evelyn's matchmaking gleam. Samuels arranged the jet. Pack light. Chelan's not for ball gowns. For the first time, a half smile cracked his facade, softening the lines fate had etched too early. She nodded, heart a quiet drum, wondering if the lake's waters could wash away the ink of obligation. Dawn broke with the whir of rotors, the Harrington Gulf Stream, slicing through low clouds like a silver arrow from Boeing Field. Aaliyah in cashmere and corduroy, Evelyn's parting gift, unearthed from a cedar chest, clutched the armrest as turbulence jostled them, her knuckles blooming pale against her skin. Ethan, opposite in a wool sweater that blurred the edges of his executive armor, noted her grip. "First time up here." His tone was light, but his eyes held the empathy of shared altitudes. She exhaled a laugh, brittle as autumn leaves. "Private wings?" "Yes, but heights. They remind me of falling." He leaned forward, the cabin's hush amplifying the rustle of his sleeve. "Mine too. At 7 on a whim to Aspen, I wept so fiercely father threatened to parachute me out. Harrington's conquer skies," he said. "I learned to white-knuckle it instead." The confession landed soft, a pebble rippling the space between them. His first unbidden share, a crack in the contract's veneer. Reno Tahoe's tarmac yielded to a Sikorsky's blades, the chopper lifting them over Nevada's rumpled flanks into Chelan's embrace, a basin of sapphire cradled by sagebrush ridges, the lake a mirror to the heavens' fleeting blues. Aaliyah's stomach fluttered anew, the rotor's thrum syncing with her pulse. But Ethan pointed earthward. "Look, the old orchards. Grandmother used to smuggle us pies from the stands, warm as secrets." They touched down, not at a marbled estate, but a gravel pad, fringed by ponderosa pines, their needles whispering welcomes. A weathered Jeep idled, driven by Samuel, a leathery rancher with eyes crinkled like well-read pages. "Mr. Ethan, been too long, and Mrs. Aaliyah, the lake's been pining." His handshake was firm, calloused as truth, and as they bounced along a corduroy road, tires humming over roots like forgotten lullabies, Aaliyah glimpsed Ethan's shoulders ease the city shedding from him, like an ill-fit coat. The sanctuary emerged from the woods like a dream, half-remembered timber lodges, nestled in a meadow's lap, wildflowers nodding amid raised beds of kale and cosmos. No grand gates, only a hand-hewn arch, proclaiming Evelyn's haven in river rock letters, the air redolent of pine sap and sun-warmed earth. Martha emerged from the main house, a woman of Aaliyah's rich umber hue, silver threading her braids like comet trails, her apron dusted with flour and fortitude. "Well, if it ain't the prodigal and his bride," she crowed, enveloping Ethan in a hug that swallowed his height, then turning to Aaliyah with arms wide as forgiveness. "Mrs. Evelyn beamed about you in her letters, said you had the fire to light shadows. Come lunch waits, and the young'uns are buzzing like bees in a bonnet." The porch table groaned under bounty from the haven's soil quinoa salads flecked with edible petals, trout grilled with lemon verbena from the herb spiral cornbread golden as childhood sunsets. Children trickled in, 8 to 18, a mosaic of faces from foster whispers and family fractures shy at first, then blooming under Aaliyah's gentle inquiries. "What's your dream harvest?" she asked a girl with braids like twisted rivers, who sketched a bakery on a napkin, loaves rising like hopes. Ethan's sleeves rolled to elbows, passed the bread with a quiet, "Try this Martha's recipe grandmother's tweak." His gaze lingered on Aaliyah, tracing the way her laughter coaxed the shy ones forward, a warmth kindling in his chest, like embers long banked. Afterward, Martha led them to the cabin, a cedar nest on a cove's lip, its deck cantilevered over waters that lapped like confidential murmurs. Inside, a stone hearth galley kitchen, fragrant with dried sage, and one bedroom dominated by a four-poster, draped in quilts, pieced from Evelyn's cast-offs. A single bed, vast yet intimate, anchored the space. Walls whispered history in black and white frames, Ethan at 16 hammer in hand, raising beams with a grin unshadowed by spreadsheets. Another him knee-deep in the lake, teaching a gaggle of girls to skip stones, joy radiating like summer's peak. Aaliyah's breath hitched. "You were alive here." Ethan averted his eyes, unpacking with mechanical grace. "Another lifetime. The walls are thin contracts call for authenticity. Choose your side." His voice was even, but the photos betrayed him, echoes of the melody Evelyn had mourned. Twilight wove their first ritual. Aaliyah wandering the paths, gathering children for an impromptu circle, stories of ancestral quilts, dreams stitched from scraps of courage. Ethan joined unbidden, whittling arrows from alder for the boys, his hands, surgeon precise in boardrooms, now roughened by honest toil. Dinner in the communal hall hummed with harmony fiddles, scratching bluegrass anthems, plates passed hand to hand. A boy no older than Jamal sidled to Aaliyah. "Teach us tomorrow. Like Miss Evelyn said you would, magic with words." She glanced at Ethan, who nodded, a conspirator's spark in his eye. "Of course, we'll conjure worlds from whispers." Nights deepened the dance. Rain pattered the tin roof like impatient fingers, confining them to the cabin's glow. Aaliyah claimed the beds left Ethan the right, pillows, a DMZ of down. Conversation bloomed in the dark, her grandmother's gospel hymns, under harvest moons, his forbidden Chopin, etudes fingers flying, until dawn silenced them. Father called it frivolity, he admitted. One storm-lashed eve thunder, rumbling like paternal thunder. But here, it was freedom. She turned toward him, silhouette soft in the casement's glow. "Freedom's not lost, Ethan. It's hibernating like these woods in winter. Wait for the melt." By midweek, the haven worked its subtle sorcery. Mornings, Aaliyah led art circles under the meadow's canopy, children daubing canvases with lake blues and pine greens, visions of futures unyoked from yesterdays. Afternoons, Ethan vanished into labor mending a sagging dock with Samuel, his shirt clinging, damp laughter escaping when a hammer slipped and sparked a splash fight with the teens. One dusk, as they walked the cove pebbles, crunching like brittle memories, he brushed her hand, not by accident. The touch lingered electric as unspoken sonnets pulling back, only when voices called from the hall. On the fifth day, crisis etched the idol a trail to the falls where young Mateo 7, with eyes wide, as the world slipped on moss-slick granite tumbling into the current's frothy maw. Gasps froze the group. Ethan dove without a beat, slicing water like a blade surfacing with the boy clutched safe, both sodden and shaken. Aaliyah's hands steadied them on the bank, wrapping Mateo in her shawl, then turning to Ethan, scrapes lathering his arms like war paint. In the cabin's hush, she tended him by lantern light, salve cool on fevered skin. "Hero's not a title you wear," she murmured, fingers tracing a gash. "It's this leaping without ledger." He caught her wrist gaze, holding hers like a vow. "And you," steadying the storm. Grandmother chose well. The air thickened, charged, as the eve before rain, their breaths mingling in the hearth's amber hush. No words, only the lean, a brush of lips, tentative as spring's first bud tasting of lake salt and long-denied longing. As the sixth dawn gilded the cove, a satellite phone's trill shattered the spell boardroom wolves at the gate, a rival's bid, snapping like trap jaws. Ethan's face shuddered the boy, receding behind the CEO's mask. "I must return. Stay if you wish. Samuel will ferry you home." But Aaliyah rose, packing with quiet resolve. "This is family, isn't it? Even the fractured kind." The chopper lifted Chelan, shrinking to a sapphire tear, Ethan's hand finding hers in the ascent, brief but binding. Below, Martha waved from the porch, her smile a benediction. "Don't let the city steal your song." Back in the manor's chill, the facade resumed separate wings, scripted smiles. But in stolen glances over supper, Aaliyah glimpsed the thaw Evelyn had wagered on a heart, once iced, now cracking toward bloom. The chopper's retreat from Lake Chelan etched a scar across the horizon, leaving Aaliyah and Ethan suspended in its downdraft, a fragile interlude severed by the inexorable pull of the city. As the sound gleamed below like fractured mercury, Ethan's hand withdrew from hers, fingers curling around his phone as directives flowed, terse commands to unseen armies, his voice reclaiming the timbre of tempered steel. Aaliyah watched the transformation ripple through him. The boy who'd leaped into churning waters, now eclipsed by the executive armor, buckling back into place. She pressed her temple to the cool window, the lake's sapphire memory fading to urban sprawl, wondering if the kiss in the lantern's hush had been a mirage born of rain and revelation, or the first true note in Evelyn's unfinished symphony. The manor welcomed them with its familiar chill, the East Wing's corridors stretching like veins drained of warmth. Their first supper was a study in silence's crystal etched with light from the chandelier plates of seared salmon, untouched as Ethan's emails chimed like distant bells. "The board convenes tomorrow," he said, fork tracing patterns in his gratin. Chelan's timing was fortuitous. Aaliyah nodded, her smile a veil over the ache blooming in her chest, the haven's earthy pulse replaced by this polished void. "Fortuitous." She echoed the word, tasting of ash. He reached across the damask fingers, brushing hers in echo of the cove's twilight touch, but withdrew as if burned. "We'll debrief later strategy for the summit." The meal concluded with coffee and separate studies, the door between them a polite meridian. Days bled into weeks, the contract's choreography resuming with mechanical grace. Publicly, they were Seattle's enigma, arm in arm, at a waterfront fundraiser. Ethan's toast to "the woman who anchors my ambitions," drawing murmurs of envy from socialites whose own unions frayed at the seams. Aaliyah played her part, her laughter a cascade over canapes, but privately. The manor echoed with absence, Ethan vanishing into dawn meetings, emerging only for hurried suppers scented with takeout Thai and terse recaps of acquisitions. She poured her unrest into Roosevelt's rhythms, Jamal's evolving sketches now winged with Shallan's Eagles story circles where children wove tales of hidden havens, their voices a salve against the growing hollow in her days. It began subtly, a whisper amid the autumn gale's nausea, cresting with the morning's first light, a wave that left her clutching the porcelain like a confessor. Aaliyah dismissed it as the manor's malaise, the press's predatory gaze, Laura's veiled barbs at brunch. Darling, that glow suits you must be the Harrington magic, the phantom brush of Ethan's hand in dreams that dissolved at dawn. But as November's leaves turned to sodden carpets underfoot, the signs persisted. Fatigue draping her like a heavy shawl scents, turning traitorous. Evelyn's lavender sachets, now cloying as regret. One gray Tuesday, after canceling a parent conference with apologies that rang hollow, she consulted her calendar, the dates aligning like reluctant stars. 10 weeks. Lake Chelan's rain-swept nights, the cabin's single-bed barriers, felled in vulnerability's gale. Her hand drifted to her abdomen, a tentative caress over the subtle swell, and tears, pricked joy, laced with terror. A life conceived not in calculation, but in the raw poetry of unintended grace. The revelation settled like a stone in still water rippling through her quiet hours. Aaliyah paced the grove's barren paths, willows skeletal against the slate sky. Evelyn's voice, a spectral murmur. Compassion's flame. Tell him her heart urged, the man who dove for a drowning boy, whose fingers had trembled on hers under star-pricked canopies. But doubt coiled, the CEO's ledger gaze contracts parsed like lovers' quarrels. His retreat to New York whispers of mergers that eclipsed midnight calls. Would he see this child as clause or complication, a tether to prolong the charade? She confided in Helen, over midnight cocoa in the kitchen's copper gleam, the housekeeper's eyes widening with grandmotherly shine. A little Harrington Johnson. Helen breathed, folding Aaliyah's hands in her own, work-roughened as woven quilts. Mrs. Evelyn would have danced a jig her legacy in tiny fists. But tell him true, miss. Secrets fester like unwept rains. Resolve hardened with the week's end, Aaliyah steeling herself like Etta facing factory whistles at dawn. She chose a Friday, the financial district's towers piercing the drizzle like silver lances, her simple wool coat a shield against the chill. The Harrington Tower loomed glass and ambition, incarnate its lobby a cathedral of marble and murmured fortunes. The receptionist, a porcelain vision with a smile like spun sugar, faltered at her approach. Mrs. Harrington, Mr. Ethan wasn't expecting. Aaliyah lifted her chin, voice steady as a hymn. It's a surprise, the best kind. Escorted to the executive area, she bypassed Caroline the assistant, whose cool deference masked sharper currents, and rapped on the oak portal, once, twice a heartbeat's echo. Ethan turned from the floor-to-ceiling vista phone to ear skyline sprawling like conquered realms. Irritation flickered, yielding to surprise as he ended the call with clipped precision. Aaliyah, this isn't... He gestured to the conference line's glow, but she stepped forward, the door sealing behind her like a vow. The office was a study in austerity, teak desk, unmarred by personal detritus, a single hopper on the wall. Solitary figures adrift in urban gloom. "We need to talk," she said, words weighted with the life between them. He crossed to her concern, etching his brow. "What's wrong?" "The press again." She drew a breath. The city's hum, a distant roar. "I'm pregnant. 10 weeks from Chelan." The air stilled his face, a mask of marble cracking at the edges. Shock widening his eyes, then narrowing to calculation's squint. He leaned against the desk support, for knees gone liquid. "Are you certain?" Voice low, not disbelieving, but distant, as if parsing a balance sheet. "Tests. Blood work." Silence stretched the ticker on his screen, scrolling indifferently. "This complicates the timeline," he said, at last. Tone analytical, a surgeon's incision. "The contract expires in 2 months. We'd need to amend residency support structures, legal, financial." Aaliyah's heart plummeted, the words a scalpel to her fragile hope. "Complicates. Is that the sum of it, a footnote in your empire's ledger?" Her voice trembled, not with weakness, but the fierce bloom of a mother's defense. "This is our child Ethan, not a merger to mediate." He straightened, regret shadowing his features like clouds over the bay. "I didn't mean..." "God, Aaliyah, it's everything. But the board Derek's maneuvers." The excuse trailed hollow as an empty suite. She backed toward the door, tears hot on her lashes, vision blurring the hopper's lonely glow. "You dove into that river without a net. But this, you tally the costs before the cradle." He reached for her plea in his eyes. "Wait, let's..." But she slipped free, the latch clicking like finality. In the elevator's descent, sobs broke free, muffled against her sleeve. Not for the child, but the man she'd glimpsed in the cove, now vanished behind ledgers once more. His message arrived, that Eve metallic through voicemail. "New York urgent talks. We'll resolve this properly when I return. 2 weeks at most." Resolve. The word echoed as Aaliyah wandered the manor's labyrinth, seeking solace in Evelyn's old writing desk. A drawer yielded treasure, an envelope, her name in that beloved script, enclosing tickets to Anna Cortes, and a San Juan ferry pass reservation at a Friday Harbor B&B. For when the heart needs harbor, Evelyn had scrawled peace to ponder the waves within. Providential, as if the matriarch's hand still stirred the tides. Dawn saw her departure, Margaret's embrace at the door, a fortress of quiet strength. "He'll seek you," the housekeeper whispered, pressing a thermos of soup into her hands. "But first, find your footing, miss, for both of you." The ferry cleaved the straight gulls, wheeling like guardians, Aaliyah's hand cradling her secret as the city receded. Friday Harbor unfolded like a balm, cobblestone lanes lined with clapboard charm, the air crisp with salt and cedar. The B&B, a gingerbread Victorian, perched on a bluff, welcomed her with Abigail and Joseph retirees, whose eyes twinkled with Evelyn's foretold grace. "She rang us years back," Joseph confided, hefting her valise, spoke of a teacher with storm-tossed skies and a light to rival the lighthouse. "Said you'd arrive with company." Abigail, her silver braid a crown of wisdom, pressed a hand to Aaliyah's abdomen. "Ah, the glow. We've a room with a sea view rocking chair for 2. The haven wrapped her gently mornings of ginger tea and porch gazes over the strait where orcas breached like affirmations. Afternoons at the elementary principal Meredith's invitation, a lifeline substitute for a maternity leave. 5th graders with eyes hungry for horizons. Aaliyah wove her magic literature circles, birthing tales from island lore children, harvesting stories from ferry captains and lighthouse keepers. Her belly's subtle curve drew knowing smiles. Not scrutiny, the island's rhythm, one of quiet kinships, where newcomers were kin by choice. But the mainland's tempests followed headlines splashed across feeds, Margaret forwarded. Tabloid venom-dripping pregnancy ploy, teacher's tactic to trap Harrington fortune, grainy shots from a clinic doorway, her face a mask of anonymity shattered. In a shadowed New York suite, Ethan stared at the screen, gut twisting like a riptide, then flipped to an emailed ultrasound tiny form pulsing with promise. Caroline's anonymous tip, laced with Derek's fingerprints. Fury kindled slow as banked coals, his cousin's betrayal, whispers of boardroom coups, the woman and child he'd let slip through calculation's sieve. In Friday Harbor's hush, Aaliyah traced her reflection in the vanity's glass eyes, fiercer resolve a quiet forge. Evelyn's haven had been a seed, this island its bloom. The child stirred a flutter like butterfly wings, and she whispered to the swell, "We'll weather this little one like the fairies through fog." Unseen, Ethan's investigators cast lines into the archipelago's coves, drawing nearer to her sanctuary. The thaw, fractured though it was whispered of mending, not in ink, but in the heart's uncharted waters. Winter's hush settled over Friday Harbor, like a quilt stitched from seafoam, and fir boughs, the San Juan Islands, cradling Aaliyah in their gentle undulations. The B&B's bluff-top perch became her quiet observatory, mornings dissolved in ginger-infused dawn light, her hand a constant companion to the swell that now curved unmistakably beneath her woolens, the child's kicks, a Morse code of secrets, shared only with the strait below. Abigail's sixth sense bloomed into daily rituals, herbal tisanes brewed with stories of her own 5 births. Each labor a chapter in the gospel of endurance. Breathe through it, love like waves fetching the shore. They come fierce, but they leave you remade. Joseph, with his sailor's gait and eyes weathered by decades on the water, ferried her to prenatal checks in East Sound, his old Ford rumbling like a grandfather's chuckle. Evelyn spoke true. You've the salt in your veins to weather any gale. The island's pulse synced with hers, cobblestone lanes, winding to the elementary, where Principal Meredith's 5th graders awaited like eager saplings. Aaliyah's tenure as substitute unfurled into something deeper, a curriculum of coastal lore, where little hands charted orca migrations on butcher paper and penned epistles to lighthouse keepers. Their words a bridge from isolation to inheritance. "Miss Alia, does the baby dream of whales?" piped little Sophia, one frost-kissed afternoon, her braids adorned with kelp-woven crowns. Aaliyah knelt the classroom's potbelly stove, casting golden halos, and whispered, "I suspect so dreams know no borders, just like us." In those moments, the mainland's clamor faded, no tabloid barbs piercing her sanctuary, only the ferry's distant horn, a clarion call to presence. As December's solstice waned, the cottage at the B&B's rear, called a clapboard haven, painted seafoam blue, its porch latticed with climbing clematis that clung like old affections. With Joseph's hammer and Abigail's eye for quilts, Aaliyah transformed it, thrift store rocker by the hearth walls, washed in soft aquamarine. The nursery a canvas of sage greens where a mobile of driftwood stars twirled above the crib. Evelyn's envelope tucked in her valise like a talisman yielded more than tickets, a velvet pouch of river pearls, her notes coda for the daughter of dreams to wear when she claims her light. Aaliyah strung them into a necklace, the luster a quiet armor against the uncertainties that shadowed her nights, Ethan's silence a void louder than any merger's roar. The child's future, a horizon veiled in mist. Labor arrived unheralded on a January eve, the sky bruised with the promise of snow contractions cresting like the island's hidden tides. Aaliyah drove herself to the birthing center in Friday Harbor's heart, Joseph's truck idling at the ready, Abigail's hand steady on hers through the portal. 14 hours unfolded in a tapestry of breath, and bone-deep resolve, the midwife's voice a lighthouse beam. You're a warrior, unyielding as these rocks. And Aaliyah's own litany, Etta's hymns mingling with Evelyn's Dickinson. Each surge, a reclamation. At 3:27 a.m., as the first flakes dusted the windows like benedictions, William Harrington Johnson entered the world, 8 pounds of fury and wonder. His cry, a clarion that shattered the hush, his tiny fist curling around her finger like fate's own knot. The midwife placed him on her chest, skin to skin his warmth, a hearth against the winter's bite. "William," she breathed, honoring Joseph's quiet guardianship and the legacy of willows that had framed her becoming. His eyes dark as Ethan's tempests, yet softened by her own warmth, fluttered open windows to a soul unscripted, unbound by contracts or crowns. The weeks that followed were a cocoon of firsts, William's milky scent, infusing the cottage like sea air after rain, his gurgles harmonizing with the gulls' dawn chorus. Aaliyah's body, a map of tender mercies, healed under Abigail's poultices and the island's unhurried grace. Meredith arrived with swaddles and a proposition, the education department's nod to a comprehensive literacy initiative, her vision of island-wide story circles needing a conductor. "You've woven magic here. Aaliyah, stay, lead it. For him, for them." With William nestled in the crook of her arm, his lashes fanning like fern fronds, Aaliyah felt the earth's quiet affirmation, not as Harrington's shadow, but as Johnson's light educator and mother, in a tapestry of her own design. Spring tiptoed in on crocus crowns, William's first smiles blooming like wild hyacinths. Gap-toothed grins that tugged at Aaliyah's heartstrings, his coos, a prelude to the man he might become. Yet, in the hush of midnight feedings, her gaze strayed to the unopened parcel. Margaret had smuggled in her last mainland dispatch, 5 leather-bound volumes, Evelyn's diaries, their spines supple as secrets long held. One equinoctial night, as William slumbered in moon-dappled peace, Aaliyah kindled the hearth and cracked the first pages, unfurling, like petals, to a boy named Ethan 9, and luminous, his fingers coaxing Chopin from the manor's grand piano notes, cascading like summer's first cascade. He plays as if the keys hold his heart's hidden chambers. Evelyn scribed ink flowing with maternal ache. Robert dismisses it. Frills for fools, shredding scores like sins. They prune the poetry from him, unaware they clip their own wings. Volume 2 chronicled the erosion, Harvard's halls echoing with ledgers over lullabies, summers at Chelan, traded for Tokyo internships, the boy's eagle sketches supplanted by earnings projections. He smiled today, true unarmored, in the Haven's meadow, whittling flutes from elderberry wands. Away from Robert's forge, he unfurls. Aaliyah's throat tightened the parallels to her own Marcus Jazz's wild heart, caged by circumstance, a mirror held to Ethan's gilded prison. The final entries penned in Evelyn's waning hand turned prophetic. Met a teacher today, eyes like polished walnut strength, quiet as tide pools harboring stars. Aaliyah, could she see past the veneer to the composer silenced? For him, for the legacy we squander in silos, I weave this web, not to bind, but to beckon. Tears traced the vellum, Aaliyah's fingers lingering on the script. Evelyn's foresight, a love letter to futures unwritten. Margaret's visit, 3 days of hearthside vigils and broths, simmered with sage, deepened the revelations. Over pie from the harbor bakery, her voice a gravelly oracle. Derek's the serpent miss overheard him with Caroline, that viper in velvet scripting your scandal for the press. He's rallying the board, painting Ethan as fractured your absence the crack. Aaliyah's blood chilled, yet resolve warmed like the oven's glow. And Ethan? Margaret's eyes misted maternal. Haunted child, like a ship adrift without its pole star. He pores over those diaries now, the ones Mrs. Evelyn hid in his desk. Sees the boy he buried, the man you unearthed at the lake. She pressed Aaliyah's hand. He hunts for you not with hounds but heart. Give him time. Some roots run deep before they surface. 6 months wove by in William's whirlwind, chubby fists grasping for orca mobiles. First babbles echoing the ferry's foghorn. His laughter a cascade that chased shadows from the cottage eaves. Aaliyah's project flourished, storytelling pods dotting the island's elders, sharing Salish legends with wide-eyed young. Her coordination a quiet revolution, funded by grants that bloomed from Evelyn's unseen seeds. May's sun gilded the schoolyard for the Arts Pavilion's unveiling, a timbered haven of murals where children's hands had painted whales, weaving through willow dreams. Aaliyah stood at the podium, William in Abigail's arms, at the fore, his 6-month grin disarming parents and principals alike. Her words a tapestry. These walls hold not just color, but courage, the kind that crosses straits, mends what frays. Applause swelled like a gathering tide as she descended heart full as the pavilion's beams. Yet in the throng's eddy, a figure parted the crowd. Ethan leaner than memory silver, threading his temples like frost on fear, his linen shirt untucked, as if the city had shed from him like molted skin. The world tilted Aaliyah's breath, a stolen gasp, 6 months compressed to this instant, the air between them charged as the eve of revelation. He stood at the garden's fringe, beneath a mural of intertwined roots, his gaze locking hers, with the intensity of a man who'd traversed tempests to reach shore. Whispers rippled, the Harrington here. But Aaliyah moved forward, legs steady as the island's granite, William's distant gurgle, a talisman. How? She asked, halting paces away, the pavilion's fresh paint mingling with salt air. Ethan's voice emerged hoarse, tempered by longing's forge. Not easily. Investigators' whispers from Margaret, your harbor's a fortress, but love's a persistent tide. His eyes drifted to Abigail, then William, softening to the boy's mirrored gaze. He's ours. Confirmation, not question, a father's claim, raw as exposed roots. Aaliyah's chin-lifted voice, a blend of steel and silk. William. 6 months of firsts, smiles like sunrise hands that hold the world. Why now, after the silence? He stepped closer, the garden's blooms nodding like confidants. I returned from New York, to ashes Derek's web unraveling. Caroline, confessing his leaks, the board's knives at my throat. But it was the ultrasound, that tiny heartbeat flickering like a promise I nearly drowned. Regret carved deeper grooves, his hand raking through hair, silvered by solitude. I went to buy a ring that day, real uncontracted, intending to beg not bargain. Shalane cracked me open. You saw the fractures I hid. But the headlines, they echoed father's creed, trust is the thief that topples thrones. Aaliyah's heart clenched Evelyn's diaries, a spectral chorus. And you chose the throne over truth. Pain flashed unguarded. I chose fear, the boy who lost his music armored against loss. But grandmother's pages, they stripped me bare. The composer, the dreamer gone to Harvard's grind, father's sacrifice, a slow starvation. You glimpsed him at the haven, pulled him from the depths for Mateo. I want that man back for him. His nod to William sealed it, vulnerability, a bridge extended. I bought a house in Seattle. Nothing grand, a craftsman with sound views a satellite office to tether the empire from afar. not for shares, but for steps toward fatherhood, even distant. Aaliyah studied him, the lines of command softened by island light. The boy, Evelyn, mourned, peeking through the magnate's mask. Part of her yearned to bolt the door on complications to shield William's unscarred world. Yet another deeper current pulled the right of blood to bond the echo of Shallan's kiss, lingering like salt on skin. "It won't be simple," she said, voice a whisper carried on the breeze. "I've roots here, real nourishing. No empires, just earth." Ethan nodded solemn as a vow renewed. "I'm not claiming crowns, Aaliyah, just a chance. To know him, to know you beyond the script." Twilight wove its indigo veil as they lingered, the crowd thinning to echoes. "Tomorrow," she conceded the word, a key turned in rusted locks. 10 o'clock, the cottage. Come as you are." Relief washed his features, a dawn breaking. "I won't squander it." As he turned toward the ferry's distant lights, Aaliyah gathered William his warmth, a quiet compass, the diary's truths, Margaret's warnings, Ethan's halting bridge. They converged, not in closure, but commencement, a family forged, not from force, but the fragile art of forgiveness. The cottage door creaked open at precisely 10, admitting a sliver of May's golden light that spilled across the oak floors like an unspoken invitation. Aaliyah stood in the kitchen's sun-dappled alcove. William balanced on her hip, his chubby fingers tangled in the curls that framed her face like a benevolent crown. The air hummed with the scent of fresh-baked scones, Abigail's recipe infused with lavender from the bluff's edge, and the faint salty underscore of the strait beyond. Ethan hesitated on the threshold, his frame filling the doorway, not with the old authority of boardrooms, but a quieter presence. Linen shirt, untucked sleeves rolled to reveal forearms, traced with the faint scars of Shallan's dockside labors, a paper-wrapped parcel cradled like a fragile offering. His eyes, those storm-gray depths, sought hers, first vulnerable, stripped of artifice before softening to the boy in her arms, whose mirrored gaze held him captive. "Hi," Ethan said, voice roughened by the ferry's crossing, the weight of unspoken miles. He stepped inside the door, easing shut behind him like a chapter turning. William, ever the discerning monarch, tilted his head, dark lashes fluttering as he assessed the intruder with the solemnity of one who commanded realms of milk and mobiles. Aaliyah's heart stuttered, a flutter of protectiveness, laced with the tentative bloom of possibility. "William, this is your father." The words hung simple yet seismic, and Ethan's breath caught his parcel dipping slightly. "May I?" he asked, extending arms that trembled just enough to betray the titan beneath. She nodded, passing their son into the circle of his hold, the exchange a bridge of breath and bone. William regarded him with wide-eyed curiosity, a tiny hand reaching to pat Ethan's jaw, fingers exploring the stubble like uncharted terrain. Ethan's face unfolded lines of command, yielding to wonder, a laugh bubbling low and genuine as William's babble dissolved into delighted gurgles. "Hey, little man," he murmured, voice a velvet rumble bouncing him gently, as if relearning the rhythm of cradles. They settled on the woven rug, the parcel unwrapped, to reveal a wooden toy piano, its keys polished to a gleam, its chiming soft as memory, when William's palm descended in exploratory glee. "Grandmother gave me one just like this," Ethan confessed, positioning the tiny fingers with care. "I played until the world said stop. But for you, play on, William." Choices unbound. The hours stretched like taffy, sweet and unhurried, Ethan memorizing the cadence of William's coos, the velvet curve of his cheek, Aaliyah watching from the rocker, her own heart, a quiet tide waves of old hurts receding against the shore of this nascent triad. They spoke in eddies, William's penchant for orca songs at dusk, his first tentative crawl across the cottage's rag rugs. Ethan's Seattle perch, a modest craftsman, where he'd hung Evelyn's willow sketches, the walls echoing less with deals than Dawn's. "It's no manor," he admitted, eyes on their son's improvised sonata. "But it breathes views of the sound a garden for, whatever grows." Vulnerability threaded his words, a man unmooring from anchors of acquisition. When William yawned, lashes heavy as lowered sails, Aaliyah bore him to the nursery, returning to find Ethan tracing the nursery's driftwood mobile, its stars swaying like unspoken wishes. "I've built something here," she said softly, sinking beside him on the sofa, the cushions yielding like confidences. "Not grand, but genuine roots in the earth, not ledgers. William thrives in it." Ethan's gaze met hers, steady as the fairy's wake. "I see that, and I want to graft into it if you'll allow. Not to uproot, but to nourish." The air between them hummed, charged with the residue of Chelan's rain-kissed revelations. Evelyn's diaries, a spectral bridge. Before words could bridge the gap, a knock echoed firm, familiar. Margaret, flanked by Dr. Hayes, her valise brimming with mainland mercies, jams from the manor's orchard, a shawl knit in Evelyn's colors. "Forgive the intrusion." Hayes began, spectacles glinting in the sun's slant, his briefcase a reliquary of legacies. Margaret, eyes alight with conspiratorial gleam, enveloped Aaliyah in a hug scented of rosewater and resolve. Mrs. Evelyn's final grace waits no more shadows. Over chamomile in the sunlit parlor, with William dozing in Ethan's lap like a benediction, Hayes unveiled the codicil, a sealed vellum, Evelyn's script unfurling like a lover's last letter. "My dears," it breathed, "if these words find you thus entwined by choice, cradling new life, my heart's compass held true. The shares are yours, Ethan has pledged, but behold, a harborside haven in Friday Harbor, deeded to you both, a white clapboard sentinel, with verandas kissed by dawn, a music room where Chopin's ghosts may dance, gardens for little feet to wander free. Inhabit it only if love, not legacy, lights the hearth. Should paths diverge, let it bloom as haven's kin, an isle for dreamers' wings. This my true bequest, the liberty to love without ledgers lie. Ever yours, Evelyn." Tears traced silver paths down cheeks weathered by wisdom, Margaret's nod affirming the matriarch's clairvoyance, Hayes's voice cracking on the coda. Ethan held William closer, the boy's breath a rhythmic anchor. She orchestrated symphonies from silences. He whispered, gaze lifting to Aaliyah's. "But this harmony, it's ours." The afternoon waned into a procession, Hayes departing with paternal blessings, Margaret lingering for pie and promises. "I'll mind the manor, you mind the miracles." By dusk, they walked the bluff's path, William between them, in a woven carrier, his tiny hands clutching theirs like a vow etched in flesh. The strait shimmered orcas, breaching in distant arcs, symbols of depths plumbed and surfaced. At the water's lip, where pebbles whispered against the tide's caress, Ethan halted the carrier's strap, a tether to their shared center. "Chelan was the prelude," he said, voice low as the waves murmur. "That night before the call shattered us, I meant to say it then. That you, Aaliyah, with your stories that summon stars and your gaze that sees through stone. You thawed what I'd frozen. I was falling, am falling into love with the woman who chose grace over grudge. The confession hung luminous as phosphorescence, his free hand cupping her cheek, thumb tracing the curve where laughter had etched quiet lines. William stirred a chubby palm bridging their brows, and Aaliyah leaned into the touch, her own hand rising to mirror his. "And I," she replied, tears salting the salt air. "Loved the man who emerged, the diver, the dreamer, the father who plays without score. It hurt when the ledger reclaimed you, but here, we rewrite the refrain." Their kiss unfolded like the tide's return, slow, inevitable tasting of sea and second chances, William's contented sigh, the seal. No grand gestures, only the profound poetry of presence. Foreheads pressed, breaths mingling as the sun dipped, gilding the strait in honeyed farewell. The relocation bloomed gradual as island spring, the harborside house, a revelation, clapboard eaves, sheltering a wraparound veranda where fairies traced silver paths, interiors airy with whitewashed beams, and Evelyn's touches, a sunroom for Aaliyah's lesson plans, the music room's grand piano, gleaming like a reclaimed relic. They moved in solstice's glow, Joseph's truck laden with cottage quilts, and Ethan's modest volumes of poetry, unearthed from storage. Ethan's days tethered to Seattle's satellite mergers, mediated via screens, resources redirected to Haven's expansion, eco-lodges, sprouting across the sound, scholarships for island dreamers. Evenings were theirs, William's first steps on the veranda's planked expanse, his laughter a cascade chasing gulls. 6 months hence, under a harvest moon that silvered the gardens, they gathered kin, Abigail and Joseph, with pies still warm from the oven. Meredith bearing wildflower crowns, Hayes and Margaret, as solemn witnesses, a smattering of Roosevelt alumni, whose dreams had taken wing. No clergy, no contracts, merely a circle on the lawn, lanterns flickering like fireflies' confessions. Ethan held Aaliyah's hands, rings glinting simple as truth, gold bands, unadorned, etched with intertwined willows. "Once we wed for another's design," he vowed, voice steady as the tide. "Today I choose you, day by luminous day, in tempests and thaws, for the grace that redeems." Aaliyah's response wove through tears. "And I you, the man who dove for more than duty, who fathers with a heart rekindled. Together we compose our sonata notes of now and forever." William, in Margaret's arms, reached with imperious glee, drawing them into an embrace of 3 hearts, sinking like waves to shore. The legacy Evelyn had spun from silences flowered not in shares or spires, but in the quiet alchemy of chosen kin. Years wove their tapestry. William, at 5, a whirlwind of curiosity, fingers flying over the piano's keys. In Chopin's wake, summers at Chelan, where he skipstoned with Haven airs. His sister Evelyn arriving 2 springs, on her laughter, a brook through the gardens, braids adorned with pearls from the founder's pouch. Aaliyah's initiatives cascaded national networks of story havens, where elders and young wove narratives across divides. Ethan, the magnate, mellowed delegated empires to nurture roots boardrooms, yielding to beachside blueprints, his sketches of soaring eagles adorning the music room walls. On a solstice eve, as fireflies danced in the veranda's glow, Aaliyah found Ethan with William at the piano duet, in minor key, the boy's earnest notes twining with his father's reclaimed grace. From the threshold she watched, heart brimming like the strait at flood from forced ink, to this indelible love, a testament to Thaw's tender power. Evelyn's whisper lingered in the melody. "Choose love, it chooses you." Dear hearts who've walked these pages with Aaliyah and Ethan, from contracts cold as winter's breath, to embraces warm as summer's shore, pause now in your own quiet havens. What vow long deferred calls to you still? Whisper it to a friend over tea or pen it in a journal under starlight. Share your story. Let it ripple like tides, reminding us all that love's true legacy is the courage to begin again. Yours in grace, until the next chapter.